Oprah Winfrey went from being born into poverty in rural Mississippi to a teenage single mother to becoming the most influential woman in the world. She was the richest African American of the 20th century and North America's first black multi-billionaire. She's currently worth $3 billion.
Where your power base is, and to work on the alignment of your personality, your gifts that you have to give, with the real reason why you're here. That's the number one thing you have to do, is to work on yourself and to fill yourself up and keep your cup full. Keep yourself full. Now, I used to be afraid of that. I used to be afraid, particularly from people who say, oh, she's so full of herself. She's so full of herself. And now I embrace it. I consider it a compliment that I am full of myself. Because you only when you're full, I'm overflowing, my cup runneth over. I have so much to offer and so much to give. And I am not afraid of honoring myself, you know. It's miraculous when you think about it. My grandmother was a maid. That's all she ever knew. The only real expectation she held for me was that I would one day become a maid and, in her words, have some good white folks, meaning people who would not speak negatively about me, who would allow me to take food home, who would be good to me, would treat me with some level of dignity and respect. That was my grandmother's dream for me. But I had another dream for myself, another more than a dream. I had a belief for myself. And I remember watching her hang out clothes on a line one day and say to me, you have to watch me, Oprah Gail, because one day you'll have to do this for yourself. And knowing inside myself that that was not going to be my life. Don't know how I knew it, other than that thing that we all have, intuition or an instinct that said, no, this will not be my life. But because I sensed that and was connected to that, and I remember it was a very still moment. It was quiet, and I was still, and I was watching her. I could see her right now with the clothespins in her mouth and putting them on the line and seeing the breath, because it was cold, the moisture coming from her lips. And I knew that that would not be my life. I knew that I will not be hanging clothes on a line in a backyard in Mississippi. So I was either 4 or 5 years old. And that belief that that would not be my life is what I held on to for the longest of times. I just, no matter what, believed that there was something bigger, greater, more for me. I think that success is a process. And I believe that my first Easter speech in the Kosciuszko Baptist Church at the age of 3.5 was the beginning. And that every other speech, every other book I read, every other time I spoke in public was a building block. So that by the time I first sat down to audition in front of a television camera and somebody says, read this, what allowed me to read it so comfortably and be so at ease with myself at that time was the fact that I'd been doing it a while. If I'd never read a book or I'd never spoken in public before, I would have been traumatized by it. So the fact that we went on the air with the Oprah Winfrey Show in 1986 nationally, and people say, oh, but you're so comfortable in front of the camera, you can be yourself. Well, it's because I've been being myself since I was 19. And I would not have been able to be as comfortable with myself had I not made mistakes on the air and been allowed to make mistakes on the air and understand that it doesn't matter. You know, there's no such thing to me as an embarrassing moment. No such thing. If I tripped and fell, if my bra strap showed, if my slip fell off, if I fell flat on my face, there's no such thing as an embarrassing moment, because I know that there is not a moment that I could possibly experience on the air that somebody else hasn't already experienced. So when it happens, you say, oh, my slip fell off. And it's no big deal. I mean, like, I was on TV the other day and somebody says, oh, Oprah, you have a run. Have you not seen a run before in your life? Well, I get them too, let me tell you. So, I mean, I can't be embarrassed. I can't be embarrassed. Now, when I first started out, That was not true, because I was pretending to be somebody I was not. I was pretending to be Barbara Walters. So I'd go to a news conference, and I was more interested in how I phrased the question and how eloquent the question sounded, as opposed to listening to the answer. Which always happens when you're interested in impressing people instead of doing what you're supposed to be doing. And it took me a while. It took me messing up on the air, during a live newscast. I was doing a list of foreign countries, and there was all these foreign names, and then Canada was thrown in, and I called Canada, and I got so tickled that I called Canada. I go, that wasn't Canada, that was Canada. Excuse me, that wasn't Canada, that wasn't Canada, that was Canada. And then I started laughing. Well, it became the first real moment I ever had. And the news director later said to me, well, if you do that, then you should just keep going. You shouldn't correct yourself and let people know. Well, I know, well, who's ever heard of Canada? So that was, for me, the beginning of realizing that, oh, you can laugh at yourself and you can make a mistake, and it's not the end of the world. You don't have to be perfect. And biggest lesson for me for television, because then it didn't matter. It didn't matter. Oh, sorry.
People don't know their purpose. And if you don't know your purpose, your immediate goal is to figure that out, because otherwise you're just wandering around here. So the moment you can figure out what it is you're supposed to be doing, the sooner you are able to get about the business of doing that. Nothing about my life is lucky. Nothing. A lot of grace, a lot of blessings, a lot of divine order, but I don't believe in luck. For me, luck is preparation meeting the moment of opportunity. There is no luck without you being prepared to handle that moment of opportunity. And so what I would say for myself is that because of my hand and a force greater than my own, I have been prepared in ways that I didn't even know I was being prepared for. And the truth is, for me and for every person, every single thing that has ever happened in your life is preparing you for the moment that is to come.
I know you hate this phrase, but what is your brand, do you think?
I'm the love brand.
Aren't we all, darling?
No, I'm the love brand.
Aren't we all?
I'm the love brand.
You like to shower love around and...
Yeah, that's what it is. I am the love and connection brand. That's what I am.
You're a bit like Barry White was the love god. You're the love brand.
I'm the love brand. Because ultimately, everything that I'm saying, whether it's in my magazine, whether it's Gail on the radio, whether it's the Oprah Winfrey show, and now everything about the channel OWN, it's about opening your space, your heart space, so that you can love more. You know, that's really all money is for. Money's worth nothing if it can't buy you the opportunity to love more. First day I went to school, I was in a classroom. By the time I was, 6 years old, didn't go to school until I was 6 years old because I was living with my grandmother at that time.
Sure.
But she had taught me how to read the Bible stories. So I went into the classroom knowing Nicodemus, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. I could spell all of those words. I thought I was preaching to my kindergarten teacher. So she was like, who is this girl? So I was never placed in an environment where I was ever made to feel inferior. I always felt like I'm the smartest kid in this room. And because I was never placed never put in a position where I was made to feel less than, sure. I didn't grow up feeling less than, you know?
And the rest, as they say, is history.
And the rest, they say, is history. And it's all about what you believe. You know, I say this to, when I do something on my network now called Life Class, the fundamental key to success is what you believe is true for yourself. Not what you want, not what you desire. It's what do you believe? You know, you can say, I want to be the most successful person in the world. Yeah. But if you believe that there's a glass ceiling and you're going to have a hard time kicking through that glass ceiling, you will be defined by the glass ceiling. And the great beauty and gift of my life is that I was never defined by the box that other people tried to put me in.
Fame comes with the mission and purpose. You know, you cannot define me or try to put me in a box and
And you can't look at my life unless you look at the whole life. So I am a Negro, formerly, born in 1954 in Mississippi at a time when it was an apartheid state. And to be sitting here with you as your first guest in 2011 is a miracle that is beyond anything I could actually do for myself. So there's something greater at work here. And the thing that's greater at work, the force that has, and forces that have made this happen in my life, along with me working as hard as I have, it's bigger than I am. And fame is the vehicle from which I get to have this platform. So do I like that? I appreciate it. If I had been what I thought I was going to be, and that is a great fourth grade teacher, I would have also liked that. Because at the core of me, I am a teacher, and I am happiest when I feel that people are getting something, learning something, enhancing themselves in a way that they'd never thought of before. That's really, truly one of my favorite moments on television or in any experience, when I'm just one-on-one with a friend or somebody I don't even know, being able to share something with them and they think, I never thought of it. Gee. I did this at the end of my show. I did my favorite guest of all time. So that's hard to do out of literally thousands and thousands. They supposedly estimated that there's like 35,000 people I interviewed over the years. But there was one woman out of all the celebrities, out of all of the famous, non-famous, infamous people. One woman Who was she? Her name is Terai Trent. Listen to this story. I'm going to try to shorten it for you,
Please
Godfrey.
do.
Okay.
Please do.
Terai Trent, born and raised in a village in Zimbabwe. 11 years old, she's doing her brother's homework. She wants to go to school. Her father says, no, you're a girl.
You have to educate the boy first.
Yep, that's right.
That was the tradition.
That's right. The boy has to go to school. You can't go to school. So she starts doing her brother's homework. She does her brother's homework. He goes to school. He gets all A's on his homework, yet he doesn't know the answers to the question. The teacher comes to the village to say, what is going on here? This boy doesn't know the answers, but his homework's perfect. She finds out that Terai, his younger sister, is doing his homework. She begs the father to let Terai go to school. The father says, no, she can't go to school. Finally, he marries her off. She marries at 11 and a half years old. She gets married. She has 3 children by the time she's 18 years old. A woman comes to the village from an NGO, Heifer International, and asks, what are your dreams? This is going to make me cry. Finally, you're going to make me cry. Asks her, what are your dreams? This child has never thought about what her dreams were. She says, write down your dreams. She writes down her dreams on a piece of paper and she folds them in a tin can and she buries them under a rock. The first dream was to be able to go to a school in the United States of America and get a college degree. She ends up, through some miracle of the NGO, going to the United States. She gets a college degree.
Wow.
Yes, she gets a 4-year degree in 3 years. Terai Trent. She goes back to the rock in Zimbabwe. She writes her next goal on the piece of paper. She buries it under the rock. She writes, I want to get a master's degree. She goes back to the United States. She gets a master's degree. By this time, she now has 5 children. She's married to a man who still beats her. Incredible. She goes back to the United States. She gets her master's degree. After the master's degree, she goes back to the rock in Zimbabwe. She writes down her final goal is to get a doctorate degree. And last year, she became Dr. Terai Trent.
Where did you find it?
Where did I find it? I found her in the Nicholas Kristof's book called something the Sky, Underneath the Sky or the Sky. I found her in Nicholas Kristof's book.
Incredible. Incredible.
And I was reading the story. I had Nicholas Kristof on the show. Nicholas Kristof, the famous New York Times writer. And she wasn't there. She wasn't a part of the show. I'm reading the story. I can't believe this book, the story of this woman, as I'm reading the story. So when we go to do the show, the producers have Nicholas Kristof on. They bring on other guests, but this woman isn't there. I go, how could you not have her there? So we tape another show with Nicholas Kristof. We go back, I go, we're gonna find that woman, Tara Wright Trent. By this time, she's living in the United States. We followed her back to Zimbabwe, to the rock. We pulled the tin can from underneath the rock. And that is my favorite guest of all time.
And the worst?
I don't have a worst. But the reason why and as I said this on my show, the reason why Tara Wright Trent is my favorite guest of all time is because she represents in that one story of the little girl in a village in Zimbabwe who had a dream and the heart and depth and discipline to pursue it. She represents everything I tried to say in every show in 25 years. She literally, through her life story, sums up the message that I was trying to give to every single one of my viewers. You can. Keep trying. Don't give up.
You have to believe.
You have to believe. Or my earnings were published all over the place. I mean, the first year I was like, really? Did I make that much money? Oh my God. It was very difficult for me to figure out where my boundaries were because I'd grown up poor and didn't have anything. So it's easy when you don't have anything and people ask you for money. And they say, I need $500. You say, I don't have it because I'm just trying to get my rent paid. It's harder when your multi-million-dollar salary is now in the paper and you get a lot of friends and cousins you didn't have before. So how do you set boundaries for yourself? I was having trouble setting boundaries for myself for even strangers. People would just show up at my door in Chicago and say, Oprah, I left my husband, please help me. And I would, because she knows I have it. So don't try that now though, okay? Don't try that now, I figured it out. So what I learned is that the reason why people keep showing up is because my intention is to make them think that I'm such a nice person that you can ask me for anything, you can get me to do anything, I'm gonna say yes, I'm gonna say yes. So when Stevie called me this time, I thought I'd try out my first no on Stevie. Let's start big. He wanted me to donate some money to a charity, and I didn't want to donate to the charity because I have my own charities and I care about a lot of people, but the problem is when you have money, everybody thinks you just want to give to everything. So every letter I ever get starts with, we know you love the children. Yes, I do love the children, but somebody else is going to have to help the children. So I said to Stevie, no. And as a person who has that disease to please, I was waiting for him then to say, I will never speak to you again. I will never call you. I will never sing a song for you. And he didn't. He just said, okay. Okay? Okay, it's okay? He said, okay, check you later. And what I learned from that is, many times you will have angst and worry about things and put yourself in a state, like someone said this morning because their phone went off, they were mortified over a phone. I said, really? You will put yourself in a state when the other person really isn't even thinking about you. So learning that I could specifically determine for myself what the boundaries were for me, what I wanted to do, give my money, give my time, give of my service to who I wanted to give it to when I did, that I get to make that decision. And just because you get 100 requests a week doesn't mean you have to try to fulfill all of that. Just because you have all of these demands on your time and on you doesn't mean that you have to say yes. You get to decide because you're the master of your fate. The captain of your soul, as William Ernest Henley said in Invictus. And understanding that really changed the meaning of my life in that I was no longer driven by what other people wanted me to do, but took charge of my own destiny, making choices based upon what do I feel is the next right move for me. Turn your wounds into wisdom.
You will be wounded many times in your life. You'll make mistakes. Some people will call them failures. But I have learned that failure is really God's way of saying, excuse me, you're moving in the wrong direction. It's just an experience. Just an experience. Just an experience. I remember being taken off the air in Baltimore, being told that I was no longer being fit for television and that I could not anchor the news because I used to go out on the stories. And my own truth was, even though I'm not a weeper, I would cry for the people in the stories, and which really wasn't very effective as a news reporter, to be covering a fire and crying because the people lost their house. And it wasn't until I was demoted as a on-air anchor woman and thrown into the talk show arena to get rid of me that I allowed my own truth to come through. And the first day I was on the air doing my first talk show back in 1978, it felt like breathing, which is what your true passion should feel like. It should be so natural to you. And so I took what had been a mistake, what had been perceived as a failure with my career as an anchor woman in the news business, and turned it into a talk show career that's done okay for me.
What drives you to keep working so hard? You and I are in the 60s category. And so when you're in your 60s, you've lived more than you're going to live, realistically. So when you realize you've lived more than you're going to live, you can say, why not relax a little bit? Why not just ease up? Why have you decided to even work harder than you did before?
Because I think, David, that everybody, the thing that works for me all these years, whether it was the magazine, or which I still have, or whether it was the show, I understood that there's a common denominator in the human experience. And I want the same thing you want, which is the same thing you want and you want. What we all want is to be able to live out the truest, highest expression of ourselves as a human being. That doesn't end until you take your last breath. What is the truest, highest vision that you hold for yourself? No matter where you are in your life, there's always the next level. There's always the next level to the last breath. So I feel that I always knew that I would be done with the show when I felt like, oh, I've said as much as I could say here on this platform. And then how will I be used? If there were a theme song to my life, Amazing Grace would be one of them, and Keep on Using Me Till You Use Me Up would be another one. You know that Bill Withers song? Yes. So I feel that until you have used your value as a human being, you're not done.
When I first started as a broadcaster, I was 19, very insecure, thrown into television, pretending to be Barbara Walters, looking nothing like her, and still going to college. So I do all my classes in the morning from 8 to 1, and then in the afternoon I work from 2 to 10 and did the 6 o'clock news. And would stay up and study and all that stuff, until 1, 2, or 3 o'clock in the morning, and then just start the routine all over again. And my classmates were so jealous of me that I remember taking my little $115 paycheck, and at the time I thought it was really a lot, but taking $115 and trying to appease them. I would anytime anybody needed money, I was always offering, oh, you need $10, or taking them out for pizza, ordering pizza for the class and things like that. That whole disease to please. That's where it was the worst for me, I think, because I wanted to be accepted by them and could not be. Because first of all, I didn't have the time. They wanted me to pledge, and I didn't have the time to pledge. I didn't have the time to be a part of all the other college activities or a part of that whole lifestyle. And it was very difficult for me socially, really one of the worst times of my life, because I was trying to fit in school and be a part of that culture, but also trying to build a career in television. It's very difficult for me to even see myself as successful, because I still see myself as in the process of becoming successful. To me, successful is getting to the point where you are absolutely comfortable with yourself. And it does not matter how many things you have acquired. The ability to learn to say no and not to feel guilty about it, to me, is about the greatest success I have achieved. The fact that I have, in the public's eye, done whatever is fine,
It's all a part of a process for growing for me. But to me, to have the kind of internal strength and internal courage it takes to say, no, I will not let you treat me this way, is what success is all about. It's the same thing that prevents you from being abused as a child, that prevents you from being abused as an adult, that allows you to build success for yourself. I will not be treated this way. I demand only the best for myself. You are worthy to say no. That it's okay if you say no. It's okay if you say no and then people don't like you. That's really okay. The important thing is how you feel about what you're doing, how you feel about yourself. It's a long struggle, though. It's a long struggle. And I'm just hoping that, in the work that I do on the show and the speaking that I do around the country, and that young people who are watching this can get the lesson sooner than I did. Because it's painful, because you keep repeating it over and over and over until you get it right. And what I found is that every time you have to repeat the lesson, it gets worse. Because I call it God trying to get your attention, the universe trying to get your attention. So we didn't get your attention the first time, so we're going to have to hit you a little harder this time. So I'm still doing it. I'm still learning.
Create the highest, grandest vision possible for your life, because you become what you believe. When I was a little girl, Mississippi, growing up on the farm, only buckwheat as a role model, watching my grandmother boil clothes in a big iron pot through the screen door because we didn't have a washing machine and made everything we had. I watched her and realized somehow inside myself and the spirit of myself that although this was segregated Mississippi and I was colored and female, that my life could be bigger, greater than what I saw. I remember being 4 or 5 years old. I certainly couldn't articulate it, but it was a feeling, and a feeling that I allowed myself to follow. I allowed myself to follow because if you were to ask me what is the secret to my success, it is because I understand that there is a power greater than myself that rules my life. And in life, if you can be still long enough in all of your endeavors, in the good times, the hard times, to connect yourself to the source. I call it God. You can call it whatever you want to, the force, nature, Allah, the power. If you can connect yourself to the source and allow the energy that it is your personality, your life force, to be connected to the greater force, anything is possible for you. I am proof of that. I think that my life, the fact that I was born where I was born and the time that I was and have been able to do what I've done speaks to the possibility, not that I am special, but that it could be done. I remember when I started the school and I said to my beloved friend, Maya Angelou, I said, Maya, I'm just so proud that I was able to create the school. And I said, this is going to be my greatest legacy. And Maya said to me, you have no idea.
Right.
You have no idea what your legacy will be, she said to me, because your legacy is every life you've touched. And that shifted the way I saw legacy or what you leave behind or what you do. Because Maya was explaining to me that, over all the years of watching your show, everybody who decided that they were going to go back to school or lose weight or no longer hit their children or get out of a bad marriage, all of those people who have seen and experienced your voice, and the same thing with everybody here. You have no idea what your legacy will be. Your legacy is every life that you've touched. And we like to think of it. I know you have done amazing things with your philanthropy. We like to think that these great philanthropic moments are the ones that leave the impact or will make the huge difference in the world. But it's really what you do every day. It's how you use your life to be a light to somebody else's, and it's how you use your work as an expression of your own art, whatever that is. My intention in creating Masterclass came from the understanding that everybody's story is the same, all stories are connected, and there is nothing that anyone who's living on earth has ever felt or known or experienced on a soul level that hasn't been felt or known or experienced by someone else.
One of the most difficult things in life is feeling that you are the only one. You are the only one who's traveled this path, who's felt this way.
I had nowhere to go. I was homeless at the time. I lost my family. Next thing I know, I'm in this car for 3 years, man. I'm struggling.
Who's experienced such devastation or joy or triumph or victory. So for me, I define a master as someone who has fully stepped in and owned the full progress and trajectory of their life.
Persistence pays off. That's lesson one.
But hearing stories told from the mouths of people who know how to live, how to course correct, how to keep going, how to never quit, how to rejoice in the good times and have faith in the bad, those people are masters. Anyone who can do that is a master. And their ability to share their stories only helps the trajectory of others who listen.
What I learned going to a beauty salon and asking them after the news director had told me that my hair was too thick and my eyes were too far apart and I needed a makeover. And sitting in a beauty salon, in a French beauty salon, allowing them to put a French perm on my black hair and having the perm burn through my cerebral cortex and not being the woman that I am now, so not having the courage to say, this is burning me. And coming out a week later bald and having to go on the air. You learn a lot about yourself when you're black and a woman and bald and trying to be an anchor woman. You learn you're not Diana Ross and that you're not Barbara Walters trying to be. I was at the time. I had a lot of lessons. I remember going on the air many times and not reading my copy ahead of time. And I was on the air one night and ran across the word B-A-R-B-A-D-O-S. That may be Barbados to you, but it was Barbados to me that night. And telling the story as an anchor woman about a vote in Absentia, California. I thought it was located near San Francisco. And one of the worst, this is when I broke out of my Barbara shell, because I'm sitting there crossing my legs, trying to talk like Barbara, be like Barbara. And I was reading a story about someone with a blaze attitude, which, if I had gone to Wellesley, I would have known it was blasé. And I started to laugh at myself on the air and broke through my Barbara shell. And had decided on that day that laughing was okay, even though Barbara hadn't at that time. And it was through my series of mistakes that I learned that I could be a better Oprah than I could be a better Barbara. And I allowed Barbara to be the mentor for me, as she always has been. And I decided then to try to pursue the idea of being myself. And I am just thrilled that I get paid so much every day for just being myself. But it was a lesson long in coming, recognizing that I had the instinct, that the inner voice that told me that you need to try to find a way to answer to your own truth was the voice I needed to be still and listen to. Get this, this is just, remember this, because this will happen many times in your life. When people show you who they are, believe them the first time, not the 29th time. That's particularly good when it comes to men's situations, because when he doesn't call back the first time, when you're mistreated the first time, when you see someone who shows you a lack of integrity or dishonesty the first time, know that that will be followed by many, many, many other times that will, at some point in life, come back to haunt or hurt you. When people show you who they are, believe them the first time. Live your life from a point of view of truth, and you will live your life from truth, and you will survive everything. Everything. I believe even death. You will survive everything if you can live your life from a point of view of truth.
And the number one lesson I could offer you where your work is concerned is this: become so skilled, so vigilant, so flat out fantastic at what you do, that your talent cannot be dismissed. Stop comparing yourself to other people. You're only on this planet to be you, not someone else's imitation of you. I had to learn that the hard way on the air, live, anchoring the news. One night in my 20s, when I first started broadcasting, I was 19, moved to an anchor by the time I was 20, and I was just pretending to be Barbara Walters. I was just trying to talk like Barbara, act like Barbara, hold my legs like Barbara. And I was on the air, and I hadn't read the copy fully, and I called Canada. And I did that on the air. I cracked myself up because I thought Barbara would never call Canada. And that little breakthrough, that little crack, that little moment that I stopped pretending allowed the real me to come through. Your life journey is about learning to become more of who you are and fulfilling the highest, truest expression of yourself as a human being. That's why you're here. You must find a way to serve. Martin Luther King said that not everybody can be famous, but everybody can be great because greatness is determined by service. Now, we live in a world where everybody wants to be famous and where we admire people for just being famous. We think being known brings us value. The truth is, all of that will fade in time. In 3 years, you won't be able to name the housewives of Atlanta. The real truth is that service and significance, service and the significance that you bring to your service is that which is lasting. So to be able to, whatever your occupation or job or talent or gift is, our honorees today getting doctorate degrees, to apparently opposite fields, HIV and AIDS and the spoken word. But what they have in common is service, using the spoken word in service to community and the world, using your knowledge and information about HIV and AIDS and medicine in service to the world. And if you look at all the most successful people in the world, whether they know it or not, they have that paradigm of service. Everybody's talking about Mark Zuckerberg and IPO. Service. Jay-Z rapping. Service. Through the word, to people, through song. For many years, I was really just happy to be on TV, and people would stop and say, "Oh, you on TV?" "Yeah, I'm on TV. I like being on TV. It's a nice job." And it was about the time that I received my honorary doctorate from Spelman around 1993. So I don't know if that had something to do with it. I thought of myself as Dr. Winfrey. That I went back and I took a long look at what it was I was doing on TV and made a decision that I was no longer going to just be on TV, but I was going to use TV as a platform, as a force for good, and not be used by TV. And I will tell you, my decision to make that significant change in the way I operated on television, using television as a service, changed my career exponentially. Service through medicine, service through art, using whatever it is you produce, your product, as a way of giving back to the world. When you shift the paradigm of whatever it is you choose to do to service and you bring significance to that, success will, I promise you, follow you. Service and significance equals success. You build a legacy not from one thing, but from everything. I remember when I just opened my school in 2007, I came back and I had the great joy of sitting at Maya Angelou's table. She hadn't been able to attend the opening in South Africa, and I said to her, "Oh, Maya, the Oprah Winfrey Leadership Academy, that's going to be my greatest legacy." I remember she was standing at the counter making biscuits, and she turned, she put the dough down, and she looked at me and she said, "You have no idea what your legacy will be." I said, "Excuse me? I just opened this school and these girls and it's going to be," and she said, "You have no idea what your legacy will be, because your legacy is every life you touch." Every life you touch. That changed me. And it's true, you can't personally stop anybody from walking into a school with an assault rifle, nor can you single-handedly ensure that the rights that your mothers and your grandmothers fought so hard for will be preserved for the daughters that you may someday have. And it'll take more than you alone to pull 40 million Americans out of poverty, but who will you be if you don't care enough to try? And what mountains could we move, I think? What gridlock could we eradicate if we were to join forces and work together in service of something greater than ourselves? You know, my deepest satisfaction and my biggest rewards have come from exactly that. Pick a problem, any problem, and do something about it, because to somebody who's hurting, something is everything. Always do the right thing. Always. Be excellent. People notice. Think of how you notice. You go to Taco Bell, somebody gives you an extra napkin and some sauce. You notice. You want to go back to that person, because even at Taco Bell, excellence shows itself. Be excellent. Let excellence be your brand. Everybody talks about building a brand. I never even knew what that was. When people would say, "You're a brand," I would say, "No, I'm just Oprah." What I recognize now is that my choice to, in every way, in every example, in every experience, to do the right thing and the excellent thing is what has created the brand. Years ago, I did an ad for Revlon for an ad they were doing called Unforgettable Women. And what I know is that when you are excellent, you become unforgettable. People remember you. You stand out. Regardless of what it is, you become an unforgettable woman. And that is what we all want. We want to be unforgettable and not forgettable. So doing the right thing, even when nobody knows you're doing the right thing, will always bring the right thing to you. I promise you that. Why? Because the third law of motion is always at work. For every action, there's an equal and opposite reaction. That is so true in all of our lives. I have paid attention to my life because I understand that my life, just like your life, is always speaking to you, where you are, in the language, with the people, with the circumstances and experiences that you can understand and interpret if you are willing to see that always life, God, is speaking to you. Now, it took me a while to actually really get this and to understand it, but once I did, I started paying attention to everything. And one of the reasons why I can now accept the fact that I can offer my gatherings of information and wisdom and call myself a spiritual teacher is that every single person who ever came on my show, and I hear there's like 37,000 guests I've talked to, A lot of them came from dysfunction, and a lot of them wouldn't appear to be teachers, but every one of them had something to say that was meaningful and valuable and that I could use to grow myself into the best of myself, which is what all of our jobs are. Your number one job is to become more of yourself and to grow yourself into the best of yourself. People don't always like you, and they're not always happy for you. And if you surround yourself with people who are not accustomed to your success, they become fearful, they become scared, because you are reflecting back something to them that they don't recognize. Now, they're not going to say, you know, I'm very fearful, because you're reflecting back to me something I don't recognize. They're going to say, you know what they're going to say? They're going to say, who she thinks she is. Who she thinks she is. That only happens when you are around people who do not mean and want and aspire to the best for you. People who want the best for you want you to be your best. So my greatest advice to you is to surround yourself with people who are going to fill your cup until your cup runneth over. So when people say you're so full of yourself, you can say, yeah. Yes, I'm full. I'm so full, my cup runneth over. And to know that once your cup runneth over, you cannot spend your life with your gallon-size offerings, offering them to pint-sized people. You have got to surround yourself with gallon-sized people who can hang in the same company with you, so that you're not offering your gallons to those little pints out there who can't hold it anyway.
If you can find what is your passion, if you find what you love, you never get tired. Or if you do get tired, you're fueled by the energy of your work. And you know what you're supposed to do by how it feels. And so you know if you're doing the right thing, if it feels like it's right to you. And when you hit the thing that feels right, you know it's right because it gives you your juice. And you know it's right because you would do it for nothing. You would do it for nothing and find a way to be able just to do it in order to be able to continue. That's how you know you're doing what you're supposed to be doing.
For me, the foundational base of empowerment, of entrepreneurship, of any kind of engagement, the foundational base of my success, of my well-being, my wholeness, my everything is knowing who I am and where I come from. In my living room right now is a painting that I've owned now for 30 years. You can Google it. It's called To the Highest Bidder. And it's at the center of my house. And it's at the center of my house because it actually is symbolic of the foundation of not the house, but the foundation for my life. The painting is by Harry Roseland, who was a genre painter in the early 20th, late 19th century. And the painting's over 6 feet tall, and it shows a slave woman on the auction block holding her daughter's hand. And I cannot come in the door, my front door, or I cannot leave without passing that painting. I am reminded of where I come from every day of my life, and I am reminded because I never want to forget it. And in my library, I have a framed list of enslaved African-American people, remember I showed you, who were held in bondage on various plantations, listed in the ledgers alongside the cows and the horses and the buggies and the other property. And I pass this list every day. And often I stop in front of it and just speak their names out loud and their ages. Jonas, 11 years old, $500. Sarah, 41 years old, $900. Elizabeth, 57, $800. And I forced myself to consider the absurdity and the obscenity of prices being affixed to each one should they be placed up for sale. And I sometimes just pause before them with a prayer, particularly before I have to make a big decision about one of my companies or whether I move forward or whether I stay still. It reminds me, speaking those names out loud, not only of where I've come from, but how far I have to go because of them. And it reminds me that I am never alone. It reminds me of what I've come through to get through. Everybody is feeding yourself on the hysteria and the negativity. You gotta stay in the light. But one of the reasons why I was so excited is about A Wrinkle in Time, because the message is that the darkness is spreading so fast these days. You must become a warrior of the light. And the reason that's so meaningful to me is because that's how I've led my whole life. And every moment in that film, I just felt like, I'm just saying what I normally say.
It's true.
and for these times, the darkness is there to show you your light. Look at what has happened. So if you put the focus on, look at what happened with the darkness that showed up in Parkland, and the darkness that showed up on the streets of Ferguson, and the darkness that showed up in many homes in Chicago with shootings and senseless murders. It brings out the best in people. It brings out the best. And so that's what it's there. We live on a planet where there is darkness and light. What I deeply believe is not that do unto others as you would have them do unto you. What you do is already done. That moment in The Color Purple where she says, everything you ever tried to do to me, where Whoopi says that, Celie, everything you even try to do to me, already done to you. So the third law of motion in physics says that what you're putting out is coming back all the time, regardless of whether you know it or acknowledge it or not. So you got to stay as a warrior of the light. My biggest frustration is not just with young women. My biggest frustration is also with young men, young people who think that, and I have a lot of this with my girls in college, they think that success is supposed to happen like that.
Yeah.
They think that there isn't a process to it. They think that they're supposed to come out of college and have their brand. And I recognize now that I am a brand, but I was resistant to being called a brand for many years because I was like, I'm a brand, I'm not a brand, I'm a person. But how I got to be a brand was not trying to be a brand. How I got to be a brand was every day making choices that felt like this is the right move, now that's the right move, and now that's the next right move, the next right move. And so my frustration with young women and young men is that they think it's supposed to happen like this, and they don't understand that there's a process to it.
Social media.
Yes, social media. You did not get to be editor of Vogue magazine by not working and working and working and working and working to get here. I love the theory of that there's 10,000 hours behind anybody who ever gets to be successful. I was interviewing a woman on one of the shows. It was so impressive for me to see all the shows that we've done. Lord, made me tired looking at it. But I was interviewing a woman. It was a show called The Wives Meet the Mistresses or some crazy thing. And this woman was on, and it was a live show, and in the middle of it, her husband tells the wife and our entire audience and the world that his mistress was pregnant. Yes. To this day, it makes my eyes water because I saw his wife's face. And I felt her humiliation. And I said, I will quit TV if I have to do this. I won't do this anymore. And my producer's like, what are we gonna do? This is what everybody's doing. And then during that same time period, so I said, I'm not going to do anything like that anymore. I'm not going to bring people on TV. First of all, we didn't know that moment was going to happen. They were like, we didn't know it was going to happen. But that should not happen on television. And I do not want to be a part of the energy that caused somebody to feel that, because that's now going to come back to me. I got to pay for that. Then I was interviewing the KKK on stage. That was the day the one guy called me a monkey in the audience. And during commercial break, I could see them signaling each other. And just watching them and their behavior, I thought, oh, they get it. I don't get it. They are using me. They are using this platform because they understand, because I'm thinking, oh, I'm going to tell you all about the KKK. They were using it to recruit members for themselves. They were using it to recruit their base. And I then went to the producers and said, we're not doing a show like that. So they said, you're not going to do the mistresses. You're not going to do the KKK. What are we going to do? So I said, we are going to create a baseline for ourselves that's based on intention. This was around 1989 when I'd read Gary Zukav's book called The Seat of the Soul. And that book was life-changing for me because in it he talked about the power of intention and that cause and effect, what goes out comes back, is determined by your intention. The energy of your intention is what determines your life. Most people don't think about their intention. They just think about what they want to do. Most people don't think about why they want to do it. But what's going to come back to you, the energy that's going to come back to you, is the real why of why you did it. And so I then said to my producers, we're not going to do any shows that are not intentional. So don't bring me an idea unless you have an intention for the show that you want the outcome to be. And we're going to strive to see if we can live up to our intentions. And so around the late 80s, we started a pre-show to talk about what the intention was, and then a post-show after every single show to say, did we fulfill that intention? And that's about the time I realized this is bigger than me. You can use your gifts, that's what you're really here to do, to illuminate the darkness in our world. So this is what I also know, that this moment in time, this is your time to rise. It is. Even though you can't go anywhere, you can't stand in line at Starbucks, you can't go to a party, you can't go to any place without, everywhere you turn, people are talking about how bad things are, how terrible it is. And this is what I know. The problem is everybody is meeting hysteria with more hysteria. And then we just are all becoming hysterical, and it's getting worse. What I've learned all these years is that we're not supposed to match it or even get locked into resisting or pushing against it. We're supposed to see this moment in time for what it is. We're supposed to see through it and then transcend it. That is how you overcome hysteria. And that is how you overcome the sniping at one another, the trolling, the mean-spirited partisanship on both sides of the aisle, the divisiveness, the injustices, and the out-and-out hatred. You use it. Use this moment to encourage you, to embolden you, and to literally push you into the rising of your life. And to borrow a phrase from my beloved mentor, Maya Angelou, just like moons and like suns, with the certainty of tides, just like the hope springing high, you will rise. Close your eyes for a moment, will you please? And breathe with me. Just close your eyes. And if you will, put your thumb to your middle finger and gather your other fingers around, and let's feel the vibration and pulse of your personal energy as you take 3 deep breaths with me. Inhale. And as you exhale, just feel the vibration, energy, blood pulsating through your body, through you. And another inhale. And another inhale. And keep your eyes closed. And let's just think about this day. This day that you have been graced to breathe in and out thousands of times. This day where many of those breaths were taken for granted. You just expected the next one to come. But the truth is, there's no guarantee that the next one comes. This day, how you started your day, what your thoughts were this morning, how you've carried yourself through this day, how you've been allowed to have encounters and experiences, some challenging, some more life-enhancing, that pushed you forward another day of being here on the planet Earth as a human being. Let's just think about that. After all you've been through, in this day alone, and the many days and years past, how you got here to this prestigious, esteemed university, the choices you made that have brought you to this day. Open your heart and quietly to yourself say the only prayer that's ever needed. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. You're still here. And you get another chance this day to do better and be better. Another chance to become more of who you were created and what you were created to fulfill. Thank you.